So I have to be really honest with you here. I'd originally intended to do a fabulous talk about why I think art schools are amazing and why I think every town and city and maybe even village in the world needs one. I was going to sit you down and show you mesmerizing drawings of Kanye West and his time at State Art School. I was going to dance across the stage with Lady Gaga. She was available. And I was going to explain that maybe her amazing creativity was influenced by her time at the Tisch School of Art in New York and the people that she surrounded herself with. I was then going to fly to the moon and back and maybe around the universe with David Bowie. And then I was going to give you a vocal gymnastics lesson with Freddie Mercury. So many amazing people went to art school. And not just celebrities, but also designers, engineers, artists, authors, people, millionaires, even social workers. So many great people went to art school. However, all of this great positivity was shrouded and changed by an email. Another thing you might not know about art schools is all the things that have been invented there, okay? So James Dyson, our houses would be very dusty if it wasn't for James Dyson reinventing the vacuum cleaner. I don't know if you've used other vacuums. Other vacuums are available. The Morse code, Samuel Morse also studied art before he went on to do all the great things. And where would you be without the Morse code? Communication, telephones, internet. And we'd all be very lost and driving into ditches, running over pedestrians and killing sheep if it wasn't for Margaret Calvert, who redesigned our road signs and easy to read road signs from a great distance, without which we could all be lost. So art really does save lives. So back to that email. I received an email, and it was one of those emails that kind of you get at 4:59 on a Friday. You know the ones that ruin your weekends, okay? Now this email didn't just ruin my evening and my weekend, it ruined the last several months of my life, and not just my life, but many lives of the colleagues and staff and students that I work with in the art school. This email was stating that the university in which we work was making cost-saving measures, and those cost-saving measures were going to fall quite heavily on the art school. Now, this was quite tragic to read, and it was heart-wrenching for many of the colleagues, staff, and students that I work with. Now, what's really important here is to say, for legal reasons, the art school is not closing down. It's still there. It's still operating. But this email did have a longing sort of pain for many of us. Why was it painful? Because we are a university, a local university, a regional university. We recruit students from really humble backgrounds, working class students, from what is largely what the government might define as an area of deprivation. It's really important that these art schools take in students. And you might think, well, what kind of students go to art school? They're the students that often don't fit mainstream education. They're people like me who were sat at the back of the class scribbling, ignoring their maths teacher, but knew that one day they wanted to do something great, but wasn't sure what that might have been. So before I get too dystopian, I think it's good to learn a little bit about how this has come about. So I'm going to take on a little journey now into the history of the art school, particularly in the UK, but it's something that's quite similar in many in Western Europe. So from about 1900 to 1950, the art school was a place which was very closely linked to industry. So many students or people in the local area would go to art school to learn arts and crafts to then get employed by local manufacturing industries. Now, there was some great things about this because in a weird way, it was strangely accessible. Because if you had some talent and you showed some potential, then you could get a place and you could learn how to do these amazing creative things. Now, there was many problems as well. It was very gendered. The men would study engineering and art and sculpture and the more technical things, and the women would have to paint teapots and design lace and do all the crafty things. So it wasn't the perfect place, but there was something quite interesting about the accessibility that there was in that original art school. You've probably seen them, old Victorian buildings, now probably run down, and they were in every town and city across the country. From the 1950s to the 1990s, art schools changed radically. They became bigger and they became more ambitious. They weren't just about educating and teaching those craft skills and those artistic practices. They were also about educating minds and making people critical, getting them to think differently. Because it's when we think differently that we can reinvent and change the world in some way. These art schools were also a place for many of our great political and social movements that happened in the 60s and 70s and 80s. So many of those gay liberation protests and marches, the posters that were made for those would have been made at the back of art schools on photocopiers. The Black Art Group, which actually comes from Wolverhampton, which is a group of students that got together, and the university, the art school, gave them space to have an exhibition and to start telling their story in a predominantly white art world. It's this period of time that really created what we now know as modern fine art and modern arts and art school. However, as we moved towards the 90s, art schools fell into the hands of universities. And this is where things started to change a little bit. To start off with, it was really good because they were very well funded. And this was a great time of great enterprise, and people were being very ambitious about the arts and what it could do and how it could link to our economy. But as we moved closer and closer towards the financial recession of 2008, places like universities started to rethink their business models. Students were no longer paying nothing or next to nothing to study. They were paying vast amounts of money to come to university. And what happened is universities changed from being places of education being at the heart of what they do, to being places for the business of education, or education being a business. And this poses quite a bit of a problem here, because what that does is it makes courses compete with each other. And I think hopefully all of you will agree in this room that the arts is valuable, yes, as an economic thing, but also the value added that it gives in terms of the music we listen to, the places, the theatres we go and see, the clothes we wear, the shoes we have on. All of these things have been designed by artists and designers, and they make our lives a much better place to be. So I've given you a little lecture about that now. So you're all thinking, well, what on earth can we do in this room? What can we do out there? What can I do, if I was a child sat in school wondering about art school? And I have one very simple but radical thing that we can do together. Open the doors. Open the doors to the art school as wide as possible, okay? Wider than they've ever been opened before. At the moment, to get into the art school, you need to be enrolled, you need to pay tuition, you need to have an electronic chip card to get through the door. What we actually need to do is make use of every single square foot of space in that building. Invite many different groups that haven't been there before. We want the young, the old, we want the talented, the people that think they don't have talent. We want the migrants, immigrants. We want people from all over the world. We want the global majority. We want people that maybe haven't even thought about coming to art school, but don't feel welcome in mainstream education. When we open those doors, magic can happen. We want those kids at the back of the class that are scribbling away. We want those people that feel like misfits. I was certainly one of those back in my day. We want the people that want to dye their hair blue and green and purple and bleach blonde. We want all of those people there, okay? Because art school is for everybody. And when we open those doors wide, we can recreate the world together. And what we can do is we can take a lesson from that history of art school as well. We can take the accessibility and those links to the local area from 1950s and 60s art education. We can take a bit of that love and radical thinking from the 60s and 70s. We can take that politics and that punk way of seeing the world from the 1980s. We can take that enterprise and international outlook from the 90s and noughties. And what we should also do, which is really important, is bring together conversations about equality, diversity, race, gender, etc., so that everybody and every person feels welcome in this place. Beyond that, we need to make sure that we bring scientists and artists together. When scientists and artists work together, they do things like play with sellotape and invent graphene. They might actually change the way in which we move around a room, the way in which we travel around the world. And dare I say it, maybe the climate change catastrophe that's happening around us, it might be solved within an art school, but we will only know if we put artists and scientists together. And that's really important. So I put a call out to you all now. I want the misfits, the dreamers, the believers, the artists, the designers, the people that don't even think they can study art. I want the people who are told they're not good enough, okay? The people who feel like they're always at the bottom of the pile. Those are the people who are most welcome in art school, because it's where these minds come together and change the world from within. Now, I'm going to tell you a more personal story now. I originally went to study a completely different subject. My school was pushing me to study sciences. They were pushing me to get the best grades that I could. And I went to a different university and I went to study a small science-based subject. And I have to tribute this talk, okay? I have to thank one special person, and that's my sister. Because my sister sat me down and said, Gavin, what is it you really want to do? And I was like, well, I don't know, I just want to be me, I want to be myself. And this was an important time in my life because I was starting to make friends, I was still in the closet at that stage. And my sister grabbed hold of my hands, put me in the car and drove me down to my local art school. And quite literally showed me the door. I walked in and I've never left art school since. I have worked in the real world, but I've always been connected to art school since. Why? Because I met my people. We think differently. We change the world. This is what we did in art school. We had those conversations that many people don't want to have. We ask questions. Not many parts of the world have questions at the center of their existence, but art school is one of them. So I'm going to challenge you all to go out there, find people, and give them a nudge to go down to their local art school and step inside and see what magic can happen.